Hey gang! Using the promo code MTGMudsta, all caps, will get you 10% off any order over $10 at Flipside Gaming. It'll also get you 10% off any orders of singles at Multizone. And it'll get you 10% off most products at Original Magic Art, with the exceptions of some paintings. If these fine sites don't have what you're looking for, you can also consider using my affiliate link when ordering from TCG Player. And if you'd like to join the Generic Goblin Gang to support this channel, there's a link to my Patreon in the description below. You may also want to know that Flipside Gaming is doing another giveaway, this time for Core Set 2021. By placing an order of $10 or more, or alternatively, you can send a stamped, self-addressed envelope or postcard to the following address. Either of these options will get you entered to win, and please bear in mind, it's one entry per person. The contest will run from June 15th until July 3rd, 2020. Today's game is another one filmed with the Punt Squad at a secret location in Ottawa. You know it's an old deck because I'm playing my Erebos deck, keeping 2 Swamps, Reliquary Tower, Phyrexian Reclamation, Withered Wretch, Sangromancer, and Massacre Worm. Peter is playing Yuriko, keeping an Island, Underground River, City of Brass, Buried Ruin, Vampiric Tutor, Sword of the Animist, and Soul Ring. Scott's playing his favorite deck in all of EDH, Maelstrom Wanderer, keeping 2 Forests, a Mountain, Fyndhorn Elves, Elvish Visionary, and Yavimaya Coast. Adam is playing Kykar, keeping an Island, Flooded Strand, Gamble, Snap, Dispel, Goblin Bombardment, and Faithless Looting. I win the die roll and start us off. I play a Swamp and cast Phyrexian Reclamation. Peter plays an Underground River, tapping it for a colorless to cast Soul Ring. He taps the Soul Ring for a Sword of the Animist and passes. Scott plays a Forest and pays 1 green for a Fyndhorn Elves. Adam plays a Flooded Strand and cracks it, taking 1 to find his Steam Vents. He takes 2 to have it come in untapped, and then casts Gamble. He searches again and puts a card to hand. He asks Peter to pick the card he'll discard, and we see Dispel go to the bin. I play a Swamp for turn and cast Withered Wretch. Peter plays an Island and hardcasts Yuriko, passing. Scott plays a Mountain and casts a Sylvan Ranger. He goes to find a basic, revealing an Island and putting it to hand. He then casts a Soul Ring and passes. Adam plays a Plains and passes. I play Reliquary Tower and I also pass. Peter drops a Swamp and gears up Yuriko. He swings her at Adam, grabbing a basic with a sword trigger from on attack. Before damage is dealt though, Adam uses Snap to bounce Yuriko back to Peter's hand. Adam gets to untap 2 lands as it resolves, and Peter then recasts Yuriko in his post-combat main phase. Scott plays an Island and casts Elvish Visionary, drawing once it enters. He swings 2 Elves at Adam for 2, and I also activate the Wretch to exile Snap from Adam's yard before Scott passes. Adam plays an Island and casts Rhystic Study. I draw and pass turn. Peter draws and plays City of Brass. He casts a Scroll Rack and activates it, setting aside some cards and swapping them for that many off the top. He casts a Wingcrafter, paying the 1 for the Rhystic Study, and soulbonds the human to Yuriko to give her flying. He then swings Yuriko at Scott, who can't block the flying ninja. She connects for 1, and this has her ability trigger. Peter reveals a Silent Blade Oni off the top, which has Yuriko dealing 7 to each of Peter's opponents, and Peter then passes. Scott plays a Forest and taps 7 mana for Dragonlord Atarka. He doesn't pay the study tax, letting Adam draw 1, and as Atarka enters, Scott has the dragon deal enough to take out Yuriko and the Wingcrafter. He then passes to Adam. Adam plays a Plains and casts Faithless Looting. He draws 2 and discards 2. He pays 1 for a Skull Clamp and passes. At the end of turn, I exile Faithless Looting with the Wretch. I play a Swamp and cast Solemn Simulacrum. Adam gets to draw as I can't pay the study tax, and I go find a Swamp as it enters. At the end of my turn, Peter loses 1 from the City of Brass, and then 2 more as he casts Vampiric Tutor to find a card and put it on top. Peter draws the card he tutored for turn, and suspiciously passes. Scott plays an Ancient Tomb as his land drop, and loses 2 life as he casts the Maelstrom Wanderer. He cascades into a Crucible of Worlds, and then Garruk Wildspeaker. Once his commander resolves, he upticks the Planeswalker, untapping 2 lands, one of which is the Tomb again. Scott then loses another 2 life from the tomb, and 2 more for paying 2 life for the Phyrexian mana cost of Birthing Pod. Scott then moves to combat, and Peter overloads a Cyclonic Rift. Peter can't pay the 1, and Adam draws. Scott then has to discard down to 7 as he passes to Adam. Adam plays and sacrifices a Misty Rainforest, finding a Hollowed Fountain and losing 2 more to have it come in untapped. He recasts his Rhystic Study, and then Skull Clamp, and moves to discard down to 7. I play a Liliana of the Dark Realms, upticking her to find a swamp. I want to say that I don't play the swamp that I find because I have a strategy in mind, but honestly I kinda forgot, and I move to my end step, discarding down to 7. Peter casts Brainstorm in his main phase, and pays the study trigger. He draws 3, and puts 2 back. He then plays a swamp, and activates his scroll rack, swapping his hand for that many cards off the top. Peter then loses 1 as he casts Yuriko again, and he can't pay the study tax, so Adam draws. Scott plays a Hinterland Harbor, and loses 2 life from the tomb for a Soul Ring, and lets Adam draw a card. Scott then drops Garruk Wildspeaker again, and Adam draws another card. Scott then upticks Garruk, and after losing another 2 from untapping the Ancient Tomb and retapping it, he recasts Atarka. Adam draws from the dragon, and as she enters, Atarka deals enough to take out Yuriko and deal 2 to Liliana. Adam plays a Sulphur Falls and casts Kykar. He then equips the Bird Wizard with a Clamp and passes. I play a Swamp and uptick Liliana. I then play out Nevernyal Disc, paying the 1, and I go to search for my Swamp as I pass to Peter. Peter activates his Scroll Rack again, setting aside 2 this time. He then plays out a Throat Slitter, paying the study tax, before passing to Scott. Scott plays a Yavimaya Kos as his land drop, and takes another 2 from the Ancient Tomb as he taps out. He's going to cast the Maelstrom Wanderer again, and lets Adam draw from study trigger on cast. He hits an Acidic Slime, and lets Adam draw from casting it from the Cascade, and then it enters and blows up the study. Scott then cascades into a Wirewood Channeler, and once it resolves, he announces he's going to move to combat. Peter casts Submerge at this point, casting it for free because of the alternative casting cost, to bounce Maelstrom Wanderer back to Scott's hand. It resolves, and since Scott now has priority again in his main phase, he decides to uptick Garruk to untap some lands, and Scott then plays out a Draga Treespeaker. He then heads to combat, and swings Atarka at me after realizing I have the disc on the field.
I didn't even notice the disc get cast or be on the table.
I can't block unfortunately, and just take the hit. Adam casts Purphoros in his main phase, which with his commander is kind of scary. He goes to combat, hitting Scott for 4 with Kykar, and passes, discarding down to 7. I draw and play a Swamp. I recast the Solemn Simulacrum, going to find another Swamp for the field which comes in tapped. I uptick Liliana at the same time to find 1 from my hand, and I pass to Peter as I shuffle. Peter draws and goes to combat. He swings the Throat Slitter at Adam, and before moving to the blocker step, Adam uses Rapid Hybridization to try and destroy it, and Purphoros deals 2 to Adam's opponents as the spirit comes in. Peter then activates a Scroll Rack for 2, and the removal then resolves. In his second main phase, Peter then plays out Jace's Phantasm, and then plays a tap Creeping Tar Pit and passes to Scott. Scott draws and thinks about what he wants to do. He makes a deal with me that if he doesn't attack me, I don't pop the disc, and I agree. He then downticks Garruk to use the Overrun ability, pumping his board by +3/+3 and Trample. He has 2 good choices between Adam and Peter, and decides that Purphoros is a lot harder to deal with than Peter's board, and he swings everything at Adam. This is enough to take him out, and in Scott's post-combat main phase, Scott casts a Sylvan Ranger, and he goes to find a basic, and passes to me. I play a Swamp for turn, and cast Lightning Greaves. I then drop Massacre Worm, which wipes out most of Scott's board, and 1 creature on Peter's side. This has Scott losing 10, while Peter loses 2. I then downtick Liliana to give the worm +8/+8 until end of turn, and then equip the Greaves onto it. I swing the worm at Peter, who blocks with a token, and with it dying, Peter loses 2 more life, and I then pass turn. Peter plays a Swamp and animates his Creeping Tar Pits. He then plays out Sensei's Divining Top, and goes to combat. He swings the land at Scott, and during the blocker step, with the Tar Pit being unblockable, Peter Commander Ninjutsu's in Yuriko. She connects for 1, which triggers her on damage ability. Peter reveals once more the Silent Blade Oni, dealing another 7 to his opponents. This is enough damage at this point to take Scott out. Peter then uses his scroll rack again and sets aside 2 and draws 2 before putting the 2 from his hand on top. He then delves away 7 cards from his graveyard to help cast Treasure Cruise and draw 3 cards and passes to me. I draw and uptick Liliana, finding a swamp. I play it for turn and go to combat, hitting Peter for 8 with the worm and the sad robot. I then play out Crip Rats in my post-combat main phase, and I pass to Peter. Peter activates his top to draw a card and put it on top, and with the ability on the stack, I activate my disc. Peter responds to this response with a response of his own, activating the scroll rack. He sets aside 4 this time, swapping it for the 4 off the top of his library. Stuff then gets blown up, and Peter then casts a Baleful Strix, drawing as it enters. He then loses 1 life from the City of Brass to pay for a Thalicus Seer. He then loses 1 more from the Underground River to cast a Pteramander, and then plays a Dimir Aqueduct, returning a basic to his hand. I uptick Liliana to find a swamp, and play a swamp from my hand. I cast a Cryptcast, and then drop Chainer. I lose 3 life and pay 3 black mana to activate Chainer, bringing back the Massacre Worm, which wipes out Peter's board, and has him losing 6 life. He does get to draw from the Seer leaving play though, and I pass turn. Peter plays a tap Temple of Deceit, scrying 1 as it enters and bottoming it. He then hardcasts the Silent Blade Oni as a blocker, and passes. At the end of turn, I lose another 3 life to Chainer to reanimate Peter's Baleful Strix, and draw a card as it enters. I draw and cast a Lethal Exsanguinate to take Peter out. He sadly has no counter in hand, and I win the game as the spell resolves. Game review time. So I think I was pretty lucky this game having the disc out, and basically being able to use it as a bargaining piece. This meant that when Scott was attacking on the turn he used the Garruk for the overrun, he was basically going to take out one of my opponents, which made it even easier for me to win the game. I have found that playing against Scott's Maelstrom Wanderer deck, the amount of 1/1s and 2/2s that he runs is very, very high, and a card like Massacre Worm can be a huge blowout for his deck. Unfortunately for Adam, his deck wasn't able to get going, because as soon as Kykar had hit the field and was followed up with a Purphoros, he became public enemy number 1. Even if he hadn't had a ton of spells in his hand, he was still going to start smashing into people and presumably pumping his tokens with Purphoros' activated ability. Peter wasn't able to connect with Yuriko all that much, and having to hardcast her several times in this game is pretty much not what the deck wants to do. He did have a ton of top deck manipulation, but unfortunately no way to shuffle bad cards away, so he just kept drawing into the cards he'd put back on top. Please be sure to tune in every Monday and Thursday at 11 AM Eastern Standard Time for a guaranteed new video. You can also follow me on Twitter at MTGMudsta. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/MTGMudsta. And lastly, you can check me out when I stream at twitch.tv/MTGMudsta. This video is brought to you in support by my patrons. If you're looking for a way to help out the channel, please be sure to visit the link below. Thank you all for watching this video, and don't forget, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.